Yes, my name's Kai, and oh my days, 2025 is shaping up to be the year of the Great Handheld War. So what can we expect to salivate over for the next 12 months? Welcome to CaiLife. Yes, welcome to CaiLife. If you're new to the channel, then welcome on in. And if you're a bona fide returning CaiLifer, then welcome back to another video. Now, before we get stuck in, I want to turn your attention to the fact that one, I've just dropped the January CaiLife competition video. So go and enter to have the chance to win a game for free. And that two, we are hurtling towards 2,000 subscribers. Whilst making this video, we're at, I think, 1,964. So you could be the one to get us over the 2K mark. So if you haven't already, tickle that like button, smash that subscribe button, and use your powers of telekinesis to activate that bell symbol so you know when new content is dropping on the channel. Now, the handheld gaming space has rapidly gone from a niche specialist arena to something that's fast become not just a viably alternative way to game, but in many ways, the best way to game. And not only are the now established players in this space, ASUS, Valve, Lenovo, and MSI spurring each other on to create better, faster and more powerful machines, but we've also got the big boy gaming players throwing their handheld hat into the ring. Handheld hat into the ring, does that even make sense? That's right, apart from the upcoming release of the Nintendo Switch 2, which if the leaks and mooted speculation are to be believed will be released sometime between May and July this year, we've also got Sony and Microsoft who have clearly seen that the increasingly mainstream clamour for consoles like the Steam Deck, ROG Ally Legion Go series and MSI Claw represent a significant and viable percentage of the gaming market. And they want a good old meaty piece of it. It all adds up to a genuinely exciting time, not just for handheld gaming aficionados, but gamers in general. So let's start with the traditional powerhouses of gaming and what their plans are for the small screen. Now, Sony are already technically in this space, having dropped the PlayStation Portal back in 2023, which essentially acts as a companion for the PS5, allowing you to stream games from your home console to the device. Originally, the PS Portal was limited to being anchored to the PS5 that you already own, but towards the end of 2024, a major update enabled PlayStation Plus Premium subscribers to utilize cloud gaming to stream their games on the go, even if they don't actually own a PlayStation 5. Obviously, if you own a standalone handheld like the Steam Deck, the Ally X or Legion Go, the benefits of having a fully independent device will already be clear to you, and it seems that Sony have also woken up to the benefits and desirability for this feature. But the PlayStation Portal is separate from the plans that Sony have for a dedicated handheld machine. Release reports confirm that Sony has already started working on this full-fat independent handheld, and although we may be unlikely to actually see it hit the shelves before the end of 2026, we're likely to hear more about what this may bring throughout 2025. It's highly unlikely, however, that Sony would be able to squeeze the tech of or afford being able to provide a handheld PlayStation 5 per se. The cost for them, which would inevitably be pushed to us as consumers, would probably be astronomical. Although Sony and Microsoft have the benefit of having been able to sit back and watch the established handheld kings set some pretty eye-watering prices for their machines, which, it seems, people are happy to pay for. A few years ago, the idea of Sony releasing an independent handheld for around £1,000 or $1,000, €1,000, whatever, would have been laughed at, but this has fast become the norm for the top spec devices. The problem Sony might have with only being able to provide the power to run PS4 games, for example, is that it makes it a far less appealing device for those looking to play current gen games on the go without cloud streaming. Now here, it'd be at risk of struggling to match up against Windows and SteamOS handhelds, which can play the latest games, and with the additional risk of having users of those devices turn to emulation rather than feel the need to own Sony's dedicated handheld. Now personally, for me, there aren't enough exciting exclusives on PlayStation to get me crazy hyped to buy one of these, but I mean, I get overly excited about any and all tech, regardless of whether it's something that's genuinely applicable to me, so Anyway, let's see what leaks and information we get as the year progresses. Now, this is a far more nuanced and intriguing conversation, as of course Microsoft already have a huge Bigfoot-sized foot in the handheld gaming space thanks to Game Pass. Now, Microsoft are arguably better placed to enter this battle with hardware than Sony are because of the power and nature of their software. They already have it optimized on Windows devices, and we've already had Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer say, "Longer term, I love us building devices, and I think our team could do some real innovative work. But we want to be informed by learning and what's happening now." Translation, we're going to release something, but we're in no rush. Now, that's partly down to the fact that Microsoft can enjoy optimizing their software experience on third-party handhelds. Now, I know that this is a matter of opinion and a point of contention amongst handheld gamers, but in my opinion, the Game Pass app on my ROG Ally X and Legion Go already feels like a very solid implementation. It's one of those things where I'm always genuinely surprised to hear of people complaining about not getting that console-style experience, because actually, I think these handhelds manage it pretty damn well. Nonetheless, Xbox's Jason Ronald has stressed the importance of nailing the software experience before they launch their own handhelds, saying, "We have spent the last 20 years building a world-class operating system, but it's really locked to the console. What we're doing is we're really focused on how do we bring those experiences for both players and developers to the broader Windows ecosystem. Our goal is to put the player and their library at the center of the experience and not all the Windows work that you have to do today." Essentially, it sounds like whilst Microsoft fully intend to enter this space, they're in no rush thanks to the advantage they hold with so many current leading handheld consoles running Windows, ergo Xbox Game Pass, on their machines. Don't be surprised to see them make the first leap though, considering they seem to be giving this space more attention rather than Sony's eyes having been on an updated iteration to their console market with the PS5 Pro. On to the Nintendo Switch 2, the first of the fully confirmed, fully announced, definitely soon to be released handhelds on this list. Or should I say handhelds? Now, I do the whole air quotes thing because obviously this isn't a strict, straight up handheld, but as much as you can play your Steam Deck, your ROG Ally et al. Docked or handheld, such is the way with the Nintendo Switch. Now, the Switch 2 has maybe had one of the most bizarre launch announcements I've seen for a while, although considering it's Nintendo, maybe we shouldn't be surprised. These are the guys who thoroughly knocked it out the park with the Wii U when their launch announcement back in 2011 caused Nintendo stock to fall nearly 10%, which was a 5-year low at the time, because everyone was completely baffed as to what the hell was going on. Now, I guess we don't get the charming, lovingly made software and hardware combo without the insanely lukewarm approach to announcing a piece of hardware that for most companies would make them a laughingstock and threaten the success of the console. Anyway, we love you, Nintendo, and your crazy approach is charming in itself. Now, familiar to all of us with the current style of handhelds, the Switch 2 will be a hybrid console, meaning it will be capable of being played handheld or whilst docked. Now, the Legion Go already adopted the Switch 1's genius system of removable controllers, the Joy-Cons. Joy-Con? Have we actually worked out what the singular and plural is yet? And that remains, although the Switch 2 screen is approximately 33% bigger than its predecessor at 7.9 inches. 8 inches. Let's call it 8 inches. In terms of the hardware itself, the Switch 2 has an LCD screen, not an OLED, which means that we can of course expect a Switch 2 OLED edition around 2026. The architecture and internals of the machine suggest parity with the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, though reportedly with the ability to support DLSS, or Deep Learning Super Sampling, which sounds cool enough to name my first newborn child after. And also ray tracing, which is certainly something more akin that you'd find in a modern console or PC. But generally speaking though, Nintendo have rarely cared about being on the cutting edge of the spec race. So don't be fooled by hardware that's underpowered relative to the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. We have a second USB-C port, hallelujah! And it's on the top! Hallelujah squared! If you've watched my reviews of the X-Real 1 augmented reality glasses, you'll note that using them with a handheld console with two USB-C outputs is a very definite advantage. But with the original Nintendo Switch, you actually required an additional piece of hardware. The second USB-C port on the Switch 2 should mean the same plug-and-play experience for peripherals like the X-Real 1s that you'd get on, say, the ROG Ally X. Generally speaking too, we're in blooming 2025, and having multiple USB-C outputs should just be a standard quality of life feature. Now, speaking of the Joy-Con, they now magnetically snap onto the sides of the console rather than using the old rail system from the original. There's also now an optical sensor on the controllers, including a front button and pads, which the Joy-Con can slot into, which is leading most of us to believe that they can be used as a mouse. Now, this is always a great option for menus and certain types of games. ARPGs and strategy games definitely benefit from the option of a mouse-style approach. And finally, we're looking at Hall effect joysticks on the Joy-Con, essentially something that should eliminate or at least drastically reduce the dreaded stick drift affliction with the original Joy-Con. Hall effect joysticks use magnets and electrical conductors as opposed to the physical contact that traditional analog sticks use. So this should be a massive upgrade in the Switch 2. Now, aside from the hardware, expect the usual Nintendo IPs, including the ultimate console seller, a new Mario Kart, yes! All of the leaked media so far suggests that we may be getting a 24-player Mario Kart title this time around, which would be amazing. Just imagine the scene in a few months from now when we're all lining up against up to 23 other IRL or online players. It's gonna be so badass. Now, considering Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is the original Switch's best-selling game, expect this to be the big launch title. Mario Kart really does have the ability to sell the Switch 2 by itself. Obviously, expect a big new Mario follow-up to Super Mario Odyssey to follow pretty sharpish too. Okay, so onto the current crop of established handheld companies and the powerhouses we have to look forward to, starting with the sort of recently released MSI Claw 8 AI Plus. Now, apart from its mouthful of a name, and this is why I love the fact Sony just slap a number on the end of their consoles, the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus is a beast of a handheld, powered by the Intel Core Ultra 7 processor. It has an 8-inch screen, a whopping 32 gigabytes of RAM, and Hall effect analog sticks. Now, aside from that, it has the same 80 watt per hour battery and 120 Hz display as the ROG Ally X, although the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus has a 1920 by 1200p display, whilst the Ally X has a more traditional 1920 by 1080p display. Benchmarks aren't 100% in favor of the Claw 8 AI Plus versus something like the ROG Ally X, but in most instances it beats out ASUS's offering here, as you'd expect. The Z1 Extreme processor in the ROG Ally X is essentially usurped by the Z2 Extreme chip, which is part of the 3 Z2 series chips that we'll be seeing in the AMD-based handhelds through 2025. Now, the Z2 series includes the Z2, the Z2 Go, and the Z2 Extreme. Bizarrely, the launch of the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus might rival Nintendo's with the Switch 2 in terms of when it's actually being made available to the public. But as a piece of hardware, this is a super strong start to the year and a very solid purchase. Now listen, 32 gigabytes of RAM is really going to hold out strong for a fair while and should mean you don't need to upgrade even with AAA games in mind, especially as the Intel XeSS, which is Intel's AI-powered upscaling technology, is looking very tasty indeed. The Legion Go 2 boasts the AMD Z2 Extreme processor, as well as a stunning 8.8-inch 144Hz OLED VRR screen. Now, this alone is a massive feature. It's a faster, higher refresh rate than what we've seen to this point, and the combination of the crisp, beautiful fidelity we get from an OLED screen, but with variable refresh rate technology. Now, up to this point, the rationale behind having an LCD display over OLED is because of VRR, variable refresh rate, but the Legion Go 2 will marry both of these features together. So what tempers the excitement here? Well, the Z2 Extreme chip might not actually be the huge leap forward that everyone might have expected. Now, Z1 to Z2 is like one whole number more, right? But it's easy to brush under the carpet that on paper, the Z2 Extreme might only offer between 10 and 15% improvement in performance compared to the Z1 Extreme, which might not be the Ally X or Legion Go 1 killer that you'd expect. All eyes will also be on the battery performance of the Legion Go 2. Such will be the extra demand on a 144Hz OLED display, but Lenovo are trumpeting greater efficiency with the Legion Go 2 with the chip that offers improved low thermal design power capabilities, or TDP. Now, there's one thing us as consumers expect in 2025 from our handhelds: it's decent battery life, even if you have the option and ability to plug yourself in. Expect the Legion Go 2 to rival the launch prices of the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus and ROG Ally X at around the £900 to €1,000 dollar mark. Now, I'm purposefully ignoring the Legion Go S here, as this is a budget-friendly Legion Go that comes in Z2 Go and AMD Z1 Extreme chip variants. Now, whilst these are nice options and there are potential spec increases, so notably with the option to have up to 32GB of RAM, these aren't fighting on the same battleground as the MSI Claw 8 AI Plus and most notably the Legion Go 2. FYI, the Z2 Go benchmarks at a 10% deficit with its performance relative to the Z1 Extreme chip, so machines running this chipset in 2025 really will only appeal to those looking for a cost-effective option. And bear in mind that cost-effective can still easily mean a fair chunk of cash. We're talking £500, dollars, euros compared to the 1,000 for the Z2 Extreme machines. One thing to note here is that in May we'll see the release of the Legion Go S powered by SteamOS. And by the way, that is the official name of it. What is with all of these mega mouthful monikers, man? Basically, it's a Legion Go running SteamOS as standard, and whilst it will outperform the OG Steam Deck, in terms of chipset, it'll be underpowered versus the Z1 Extreme because it runs the Z2 Go. I hope that makes sense. Now, ASUS will be the last out of the gates with regard to whatever their next ROG Ally handheld will be. We've had MSI and the Claw 8 AI Plus. We know that we've got an impressive looking Lenovo Legion Go 2 on the way, but ASUS will be biding their time on the release of their next machine, considering they released their 2024 offering, the ROG Ally X, a mere 9 months ago. The expectation will be on ASUS to refresh their Z1 Extreme line rather than refresh the X. Now, whilst the Ally X also has the Z1 Extreme chip in, the ROG Ally Non-X is definitely due a spec bump. It has 16 gigs of RAM versus the 24 gigs in the X, and there's definitely space for a new Ally machine to drop into that area that doesn't render the X obsolete this year, especially with the Legion Go S coming out. Now, if I were to hazard a guess, I'd say we're almost guaranteed to have an ROG Ally that'll sit to compete with the Legion Go S. So a RAM bump from 16 to 24 or 32 gigs, an improved screen, perhaps improved battery life. Remember, the OG Allies only have a 40 watt-per-hour battery, and that's not good enough in 2025. But with the Z2 Go chip, which, as I've already said, is purported to actually be around 10% weaker than the Z1 Extreme. Now, it might be that ASUS decide to follow suit with Lenovo and also release a full-fat Z2 Extreme-based handheld, but as I say, I think they may hesitate to do that for fear of completely shutting out sales for the Ally X. On the other hand, ASUS have the opportunity to one-up the specs of the Legion Go 2 by the time they release it sometime around Q3 or Q4 this year. Now, if I had to speculate, I'd suggest that they'll either offer a cost-effective, relatively underpowered Ally X with the Z2 Go processor, or a similarly spec'd machine to the X with the Z2 Extreme processor, which would mean that they would essentially cut the price of the Ally X to present as a cost-effective option, and then they'll get ready to offer a powerhouse successor to the X not long after that. There's no doubt that they'd need to slap 32 gigs of RAM into this to compete with what is the new normal for RAM in 2025 handhelds. But can you imagine when there is support for up to 64 gigabytes of RAM in these things? The first company to make the jump to 64 gigs, I think that's going to be the real headline grabber, although I do slightly worry about where the cost of something like this might take us. Now, all in all, we're looking at a truly exciting time for both handheld gaming and gaming in general. Now, what do you think Sony and Microsoft will bring to this space? And are you planning to pick up one of these beastly handhelds in 2025? And which company do you think will come out on top? Let me know the answer to all of these questions in the comments, and let's have a good old chinwag about it. Once again, don't forget to go and enter the January CaiLife competition. Thank you so much for your support to the channel, guys. I can't believe how well we're doing here. And this competition and these monthly competitions really do mean that I get an opportunity to give back to you the support and the love that you guys are giving to me. So head on over to that video and go and get yourself entered to win a free game. And as ever, that just leaves me to say thanks for joining me over here on CaiLife. And until the next video, take care, much love, and peace out.